and gentlemen, a top army officer, Lieutenant General Puri, an outgoing Corps commander of the Mountain Strike Corps at Panagarh, has written a letter to the Eastern Command with officials at Army Headquarters marked on it. The letter, dated October 1, 2024, specifies challenges observed in units led by women commanding officers or COs within the 17 Corps over the past year. After what is described as an in-house review based on demonstrated performance of women officers, the letter has sparked a massive debate among Army and defense experts. Lieutenant General Puri, according to various reports, has claimed that women officers are neither trained nor groomed to be commanding officers or COs. They exhibit poor interpersonal relations, lack of empathy for officers and troops, lack of understanding of hardships attributable to a need to overcompensate and make unreasonable performance demands, with an uncontrolled urge to make derogatory statements regarding juniors to usurp credit. He's also alleged that they have a misplaced sense of entitlement. Some exhibit over-ambition with an exaggerated tendency to complain to senior commanders rather than exercising their own authority first. For some, it's my way or highway approach, and they handle HR issues with firmer hand than male counterparts. Even as professional disagreement or minor arguments are viewed as insubordination. We have reached out to the Army for a response, and we've not got an official response yet. There's also not been any reaction or response of Lieutenant General Puri since details of this letter has been reported across publications. Remember, the opening of command roles to women became possible only after the Army began granting them permanent commission in 2020, after a landmark order by the Supreme Court. Again, a demand fought for by women officers in uniform. And the Supreme Court at that time had said, that is, while listening to the arguments against permanent commission, the court had said arguments against women officers in permanent commission was based on sex stereotypes and gender discrimination, and that demand of command positions to women officers is discriminatory, and it must be ensured that they are treated at par with male officers. Well, let me open this up to my panelists at this point. I'm being joined by Major General Dhruv Katoch, retired, as well as the Director for India Foundation. Thank you very much for joining us, sir. Good evening. Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni, a defense expert. Lieutenant Colonel Ankita Srivastava, who's a defense expert. Thank you very much, both of you, for joining us. Very good evening. As well as Captain Amrit Kaur, a defense expert, a former Army officer. Thank you very much, all of you. Thank you very much for joining us. My first question at this point, let me straight go to you, Lieutenant Colonel Ankita Srivastava. How do you look at the letter, the details that are out of the public domain at this point?
Okay, thank you, Sneha, for calling me here. How do I look at it? See, I'm from one of the initial batches. I joined Indian Army in 1993. And that time, the Indian Army had just started induction of women in 1992, just for 5 years. So do you think, was it a smooth transition? Or was it my smooth entry? No, it was not. It was full of chaos, full of doubts, full of challenges, and a lot of people doubting our performance. And yes, we in the initial batches had tough time, but yes, we were determined and we were focused to prove ourselves. Why prove ourselves? Because the society as such was questioning women's performance in various roles, be it any medical or maybe journalism or any kind of field we were in. So I'm part of that train that started that journey, and it's still moving, and I've been very proud of that journey, that I've been part of that change which came in. Of course, because of the change that came in, I had to undergo a lot of challenges, a lot of chaos, but then I have no complaints. I became more stronger, and I kept on adapting myself to the aligning to the ethos of the Indian Army with total pride and happiness and satisfaction. Now, when I look at this letter, so I can just only laugh at it, because this is exactly happening what it happened in 1992, when I was also questioned, when my performance was also being questioned, whether I'm good, whether I'm, even after fourth, I think I remember in the fourth year of my service, when the army was considering to make it 10 years, again there was a debate. And do you think when army had decided to induct women officers in 1992, 32 years back, there was definitely a strong debate. One sector saying for the motion, and one sector must be going on against the motion. So exactly now, 1 year, these 108 women officers who have taken over the command since last 1 year, it's been just 1 year. So these things are teething problem. The shoe bites are there. People are going to point out certain things. Maybe he might have thought about making it in an analysis, but my hurt is that this thing should not have come out in the social media. This could have been within the house. We could have sat down, discussed, analyzed, given suggestions, and given guidelines also. That's it.
I think very important points. Major General Dhruv Katot, if I can get you in at this point. I mean, let's just look at what Lieutenant Colonel Ankita Srivastava has said. What has she said? She has said these arguments are nothing but a repeat of what she faced in 1990s. She was part of the first batch of officers who were allowed into the services, who were I mean, allowed is the wrong word. She competed for it. She was commissioned into the armed forces. She went through her examinations, everything, and it's almost the same arguments. It's a repeat mode. How do you look at something like that?
Thank you, Sneha. Sneha, no, I can appreciate Colonel Srivastava's anguish, etc., etc. But you see, the armed forces have their own requirements. And when General Puri wrote that letter, it was supposed to be an in-house letter. I'm surprised it's got leaked out, and it has got absolutely no business now to be in the press or in the media. Now, the very fact that it was supposed to be a confidential letter required to be addressed in-house for issues which the army felt important gives me the feeling that it was based on absolute truth. This is what the general actually felt. And he was looking for certain correctives. How do we correct something which has gone wrong in our command? And he's serving in an operational command area. Ultimately, you see, when a war is to be fought, it is not the honorable judges of the Supreme Court who will be fighting in the battle on the front line. It is the Indian Army which will be there. And we can say that, okay, we have given certain directions, etc., etc. But the accountability rests with the Army Chief, with the Army Commander, with the Corps Commander, and with the entire command chain down the line. Now, the Corps Commander, in his wisdom, felt that there were certain challenges as far as the commanding officers, the women commanding officers are concerned. And I feel he is right. They need to be addressed. One of the basic issues which, incidentally, I had this discussion about 4 years earlier also, when the question of commanding officers came in. And at that time, I made a point which I would like to repeat again. I have absolutely no problems in women getting into the armed forces at any level, even in the infantry. All that I'm saying is, please compete at the same level. That means there should be no gender, it should be a gender neutral selection, a gender neutral training, and do everything as per the law. Whatever is laid down, please use that. Now, if we violate from those principles and we have reduced standards for a certain section, like even as far as the women officers are concerned, they don't go through the entire selection process. You have a separate examination, you are selected based on that. Now, I don't think that is the right way to go about it. please treat women and men gender neutral, right? Have no discrimination. And if the women win, let there be 100% women army. There's no problem in that. But don't reduce standards. That is the first point. Number two, they have not been trained for command. That is true. That needs to change. So that will change, I presume, after this letter. But I would hate to say that what the Corps commander has written is not justified. I would go with him in its entirety as to what General Puri has stated. Sneha.
Okay, Captain Amrit Kaur, if I can get you in. I mean, for somebody who's watching this debate who doesn't really know how the army is functioning at this point, how the army functions at all, how women at command positions, how officers at command positions function, Captain Amrit Kaur, how would you explain when the statement is made that women officers and men officers are not at the same platform? They do not have the same tests. They don't have the same platform. How is this to be looked at? How do you look at it?
Good evening, Atanu, and good evening to all the panelists. First of all, Atanu, I would like to address the issue of such a sensitive letter coming out in the open, wherein the points like Colonel Srivastava had said, the teething issues, the initial hitches that a lady officer as a commanding officer is facing, and whatever has been, noticed of her. I believe these discussions must have taken place in-house. These discussions must have, you would have brought along all the lady officers for a meeting. You would have, point to point, you would have discussed the issues with them. First of all, this letter coming out in the open, in the media, I think it's a very grave issue, according to me. It's very sensitive. Not just for the morale per se, in general, overall, everybody who is reading this letter is taking away something which is not a wholehearted truth. Secondly, as far as your point on, women and men being on the same platform, let's understand the first basic thing, as again, Colonel Srivastav had brought out very rightly. In 92, the lady officers have come into army after a very long battle in the courts. After coming into the army, it has taken them good about close to 30 years to reach a stage which is a basic common thing called pension. Let's talk about that first. For them to get into the army and get pension after 20 years has taken such a long fight. Why that? Isn't that discrimination? Where does man and women come in that frame altogether? Isn't pension a basic right for anybody who is serving in the government service, giving a certain number of years? For that, also, the women officers had to go through a long battle, a long, long battle. Now, as far as the training is concerned, let's accept the fact that, yes, initially, the training had started at a very ground level, basic training had started. But now, currently, as we speak, the trainings have, been advanced. And at OTA, if I say, gentlemen and lady cadets have to undergo the similar training. We have women, taking training at the most esteemed organizations, the academies, the National Defense Academy. We have girls who have, after having gone through the entire grilling process. I do not think Army will ever take in girls in an organization like NDA without having them gone through that entire process, which is a basic requirement. So yes, we are, moving towards what General Katoch just brought out. We need to have that parity in training as well. I do not deny that fact. But right now, for the women who have taken the command role, I do not think they have just been handed over the chair for they had to undergo an equivalent course of senior command. They have not just been given the role of commanding officer just like that. So definitely they have met the QRs. They have met certain basic requirements. Only then they have been given that chair. So it is just 1 year. And 108 is a huge number. So you cannot generalize the whole scenario with one odd case which must have come into the notice, you cannot generalize the entire, lady officers into the same gambit. So I think
Fair
we
point.
need to really be sensitive about this issue.
Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni, and it is definitely a question that how does such a sensitive document, letter by a very top army officer get into public domain? That's of course one question that for now is not going to get answered for a while at least. But Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni, what this letter does, we don't know the intent of this letter. We don't know the context of this letter. But for somebody who has accessed this letter, what's happening? They look at it and say, oh, women commanding officers are not trained for command positions. Women commanding officers, they're habituated to overcompensation. They centralize decision making. They look at everything as subordination. It's a skewed representation, and it's hard to believe that X number of commanding officers would have exhibited this trait as a general thing, because at the end of the day, as you had the other panelists here speak, Lieutenant Colonel Ankita Srivastav as well as Captain Amrit Kaur, there's a screening that's happened, there's a selection that's happening, there's a commissioning that has happened, and there's a training that's happening. So it's important to put this letter in perspective.
Thank you very much. At the very outset, let me be honest to tell you that this particular letter has been written by the Corps Commander, stating very clearly that he has only 8 lady commanding officers under him. He is not casting any aspersions on anyone. He is stating very clearly that this gender equality and gender neutrality. Now, what does gender equality mean? Giving an opportunity to everybody. And having become a commanding officer is gender neutrality. It's not a woman commanding officer or a male commanding officer. It's a commanding officer. Anybody who joins the service aspires to become a commanding officer. And to make that position strengthened for a woman officer, he stated that he has noticed the following, not only as a corps commander, but having interacted with everybody, and that these things could be addressed. He also addresses that how and why these things have come up and what and how we can do away with these kind of certain attributes of human relations that have come to notice. He's not generalized, he's just stating. Now, for instance, he says it very clearly and rightly so. Like what did Ankita say? Ankita said that there was chaos. What word did she use? Chaos. And that chaos continued for some time. The women officers have just taken over as commanding officers. And it's only been a year. So it will take time. Obviously, it can take time because they are not being given. To become a commanding officer, you have a criteria. You have to take a criteria point. You become a company commander, you become a second in command and things before you become a commanding officer. Courses is not just one of it. Yet another thing is, slowly and steadily you groom people. It's a command. What is a command? Everybody is looking up to the commanding officer. To be an officer is different, and to be a commanding officer is different. And to become a good commanding officer is what the Corps Commander has brought it out to say, well, look, these are the things that I have noticed, and these should be addressed so that hereinafter, since women commanding officers are going to be there in the services, and especially in the army, as directed by the Supreme Court, we must groom them and ensure that no such, pitfalls may be seen by anybody. Nobody should comment on issues like this. And I think it's a fantastic thing. Nobody should take an offense to it. It is not to demean anyone. It's with a purpose that hereinafter, since it's only 1 year, and he has seen 8 lady commanding officers, and this is what he has seen, and he ensures that to do away with this pitfall, the following that he recommends, and says how it should be done, whether it is training the trainers, how the human rights policy, the Adjutant General should do, the MS should do, and all that. I don't think there's anything wrong, and nobody should take it an offense.
Right.
See, the lady officers have become commanding officers for the first time. It's the very first year. So why should anybody take an offense that no, this is not done, this is incorrect? Of course, what is incorrect is this letter should not have been in the public. It should have been in-house. But since it has come out in the public, that is why we are discussing. Even I didn't know it till I saw it. Nobody would know, and nobody should know. But that is a separate issue. But since it's come out, I'm sure all lady officers accepted. I'm sure nothing wrong has been said on this particular issue. Yes, yeah.
Lieutenant Colonel Ankita Srivastava, would you want to respond to how we had just Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni put this out? But also, I want to get you to respond to what Major General Dhruv Kator said a while ago. And that is also something that this letter speaks about. The letter speaks about how the selection, the commissioning, the training has to be gender neutral. You know, for a long time, women officers have fought hard for gender parity within the armed forces. And now, from gender parity, is gender neutrality the next step? Do you view this in the same lens?
Okay, yes, thank you. See, when we got inducted in the 90s, obviously we did not ask for a lesser number of months of training, number one. This was designed by senior officers that time also. Obviously, the male officers, when we were not there in the Indian Army, the lady officers. So, firstly, the lady officers have never demanded anything separate, anything cushy or something. We have been talking about gender neutrality and equality. Now, when we are talking, when Dhruv sir has said this, I agree. But what General Puri sir has brought out in his letter, I personally feel it is more of a human trait which can be attributed to any of the gender, be it male or be it female. There might have been cases the male officers, male commanding officers might have also shown these traits, but those things have not been it has not come out because, as Kulkarni sir said, this letter shouldn't have come out. Yes, this letter shouldn't have come out. This now any number of people from the civil world or any young children who are aspiring to join Indian Army, if they read this letter, they are going to interpret it as their own understanding. And every line will have a different meaning. Right now, we are debating because of this only. Now, had this letter not come out, this could have been taken as an analysis. It could have been taken as an improvement within the four walls of our organization. And I'm sure this must be for the male officers as well. Time and again, things must be coming for them. And since General Puri has talked about only 8 lady officers, yes, I agree. It is not meaning that all the lady officers have been talked about. And it's not only the 8 lady officers, there may be 1,000 male officers also being scanned this way, and they might have also been told many times. And this is the way I personally feel that the lady officers could have been told within the four walls, okay, these are the things we need to improve, these are the things we need to work upon. But there are certain things like sense of entitlement, like lack of empathy, or the training part, as we are discussing about the training part. Believe me, since we have been rolling from when I was inducted in the 4th year of service, I was asked, they are planning to make it now 5 years. Was it my mistake that I was pushed into the 5th year of my service, then 10th year of service? I'll tell you a very interesting thing. When I went into the 10th year of service, the first and the second batch had already gone home. Why? Because there was no clarity, the policies were not in place, people were not aware that we are going to become lieutenant colonel. The day we became lieutenant colonels on the 14th year of service or the technical lady, again there was a lot of chaos because nobody has expected that we will become lieutenant colonels. Now we have become the lady commanding officers. Obviously, people were not ready, but we have been rolling from one compartment to another compartment with the training. I would say the training is there, but yes, there is certain kind of a misalignment in the organization, I would say, like as people are thinking that we are not trained properly, we have been trained. All these commanding lady or lady commanding officers have gone higher command course. The courses have been designed that way. They might have been shortened during the duration must have shortened, but yes, they have been taught. They've been taught to command, and yes, in the years to come, you will see a much better shades of lady commanding officers as well.
Major General Dhruv Katot, if I can get you to respond to Lieutenant Colonel Srivastava, and also a very difficult question for me to ask as well. Because this letter, is it more about, I mean, of course it will be seen with the lens of women army officers and how it's being performed, but the content of the letter, when you look at it, is it more to do with how the organizational setup has not trained women officers in a way that male officers are trained. Why I'm asking you this question is because there are women panelists who are here who are saying, we have done what was expected of us. We have trained the way we need to be trained. We have done the command course for which they were made to do, or they were expected to do. So they have done their due diligence. Is this beyond them?
Sneha, let me put it this way. Amongst the male officers, 70% do not make the first selection grade. That is the wastage rate. And these 70% include officers who have done 3 years of training in the National Defense Academy and 1 year in the Indian Military Academy. It is not that these officers aren't good. There's just no space on top. And that's the sad truth. Now, it was to rectify this that we started the Short Service Commission to have officers at 5 years. And after 5 years, they were supposed to leave the army. Then, of course, it became a welfare army, and that 5 years became a permanent commission for the male officers. And when the women officers became Short Service Commission, the same analogy was applied that, okay, it's a Short Service Commission. They'll be there for 5 years, and out they go. The same standards were there for the male officers. Now, the Supreme Court rightly said, if you are going to keep the male officers beyond 5 years into permanent commission, then you can't deny the lady officers, and I totally support that decision. You have to be gender neutral. So that was correct. But now when we are looking at it, when these officers, they were not designed to be in command in certain of the services, like in the engineers, etc., where they are coming in now. But in other arms, in the other services, like in the medical branch, where the male and the female officers underwent exactly the same training, right from the word go, well, you have the ladies became colonels, they became brigadiers, they became generals, they become lieutenant generals. There has been no discrimination. But in the case, in the present case now, they have become commanding officers only now. So they were not designed to be commanding officers from the time they were commissioned. That is a fundamental difference. Even the commanding officers, and I'll be very honest with you, I've been a CEO and I've dealt with these cases. There is that sense, I feel sensitive, I have to send a woman officer to say a post at 14,000 feet. Oh, I'm not going to send her. I'll be very honest with you. I'll send a male officer there. Because in that 14,000 feet, there is a company, and you don't want to send a woman there. Anything can happen. So we said no. But anything that can happen, there could be a medical emergency, there could be other issues, which is easier to handle for a male. So those are the issues which came up, and in that sense, it is the women officers who lost that middle-level training to be in command. This is not, I would like to repeat, it is not a reflection on the capacity and capability of our women officers, whom I have personally met and I admire. It is simply a question that there is a challenge before us now of women commanding officers, which needs to be addressed. This challenge exists because the initial induction when they came in, they were not designed to be commanding officers. It was supposed to terminate at 14 years, as correctly brought out earlier. Okay, now they can serve. As they will continue to serve, my point is, from the NDA itself, please have the same training at the same level for the girls and the boys. Let them go through and let there be a uniform selection. There shouldn't be any quota system. We'll have 10 boys and 10 girls, or 1 boy and 10 girls, or whatever it is. Whoever gets it, if 100% girls make the grade and 0% boys, do it that way. I've got no problems with that. But don't change the system. It must be gender neutral, not gender equal. And once you get into that, then capabilities come in. And I'm quite sure our women officers have the capacity and capability to compete on an equal level with the men and surpass them also. They don't want any sort of any comfort zone to say that women can't do this or can't do that. They can do everything. So make your laws accordingly. Make it gender neutral. If they get in, good. If they don't, good. It doesn't really matter. Boys also don't get in. And 70% of the male officers, after going through NDA, do not make it to the first command level. Please understand that. This is for all the ladies. Sneha.
All right. Okay, let me just get in at this point, Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni. And it's interesting. I want to take it from where Major General Dhruv ka torch left it, because he spoke as a commanding officer, the challenges that he faced and why he would choose a male officer over a female officer, a woman officer. Let me just take it from there. Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni. And I would also like to go to Captain Amrit Kaur right after that. But Lieutenant General Kulkarni, let's look at the huge paradigm shift and literally a battle for parity, as many would call it, for women officers, one, to get pension, to get permanent commission, to get command positions. And, you know, if you look from an outsider's prism, Army is the last bastion to allow women in that frontier. If you look at that from an outsider's perspective, it's literally like the Supreme Court coming down extremely heavily on the Army and making some very, very strong statements about how denying women command positions, permanent commissions is unacceptable. I'm putting it very simply because the words from the Supreme Court were much stronger and scathing than this. Now, a letter of this sort that's written, the feedback that's coming for, say, X number of commanding officers who are women, vis-a-vis the larger umbrella of commanding women who are currently serving in the Army, is it even possible to not look at it from the prism of gender?
Shreya, this aspect of the women being given command came as a direction from the Supreme Court. Let's put it that way. The lady officers they did not join the army, neither did they were trained in that manner to take the command. It is in that context, since the directions that come, they were to be implemented and well accepted also with grace and to be done with pride. And why I say this? Because women have proved that they're capable of. Having said that, now since the command has just about been given to them, the Corps commander has brought out some shortcomings that these are the things we need to address. It is not that the male officers aren't affected by it. Of course the male officers are being affected, and all of it will get reflected in the confidential reports should anything of it be going wrong. They're prepared for it. But the lady officers, since it is for the first time they've been given command, and that is something, a new field that they've got into, and hence the Corps commanders brought down the following things need to be human relations, parity, and my way or highway, these kind of things that are all that he just brought it to the notice so that it can be addressed and all the shortcomings can be done well. Now, having said what General Katoch was talking about and what you are wanting to know, whether women officers would be sent, obviously there are times when you wouldn't want to send them, not for any other reason. But supposing I have only 4 women officers, obviously I'll send them. But if I have an option, why would I want to? Should something go wrong, I'll have to again send a party of another 6-7 people to do something. So therefore, it would be, it takes time. There is no denying the fact. Adjustments in the present context will be done. Earlier, like Ankita said, 92, 93, we were not even ready to accept women officers. We didn't know how it would be, but they proved themselves. They've come up well. Whatever way, whichever way the training has, and now slowly and steadily you find in OTA, they're undergoing the same kind of training. They're not much of a difference. Now they've got into NDA. They'll have a similar kind of training. So slowly and steadily it will take time. And this letter is not to be seen as demeaning anybody or being seen as something else. It is with a view that the lady officers have just become commanding officers after so many years, and that these shortcomings should be addressed, and those need to be addressed because whether their courses, they're trained, they have to be given criteria appointments before that, and how to go about it, that is what it involves. Not from the point of view. Obviously, even the women officers, when they joined for 5 years. That 5 years became 10 years. That 10 years became 14 years.
Lieutenant General Kulkarni.
All of it, the directions are coming from the Supreme Court. Yeah.
Lieutenant General Kulkarni, before I go to Captain Amrit Kaur, I just want to ask you one more question. And I'm asking this with utmost sincerity, with all respect. You all have served in the Indian Army. I haven't. I have a very outsider's perspective. From what you have said, that it's been a long journey. But given a preference, the choice would be very different between choosing between 2 genders. Is that more to do with conditioning?
Say again, it's got more to do with what?
Is it more to do with conditioning? Is it more to do with how we think, how the society has been conditioned to think, how
Yeah,
male
obviously.
officers, how commanding officers who have been in positions for commanding officers for generations have been conditioned to think. And that in itself is a huge battle to wage against. But I mean, this is my question. Please do answer.
See, Sneha, what happens? It's a process, and in a process, you find our men folks also come from villages. They take time. It isn't that anything wrong with it. They also accept it as much as it in the civil. It would be in the armed forces. Nothing is wrong. They're very competent. But it takes time. As I said, gender equality and gender neutrality. They're two different things. And you cannot have Occidental thing on Oriental culture. It takes time. Obviously, we have been brought up in a different fashion. They've been brought up, even the women officers, when they joined, they did not join to get pension or get permanent commission. They joined initially only for 5 years. And then subsequently, as the things progressed, maybe by direction of the Supreme Court, the organization thought that everybody from 5 years should be given 10 years, 40 years, like that. So it takes time. I think it does take time. And for a commanding officer, when it's the very first year, only 1 year on command, they will take time to understand. It's different to be an officer and it's different to be a commanding officer. And that is where that letter is in that context, and we must not see it as demeaning or anything of that kind, or seeing women lesser or nothing of that kind. They're all competent, physically fit.
I'll allow Captain Amrit Kaur to have the last word on it. It's important, and the same question of conditioning is directed to you, Captain Amrit Kaur. I asked you the same question. I mean, our decisions, there's a training. There's a training for an officer. There is a command training. There are troops, there are officers, there's leading from the front, there's commanding from the front, there's commanding respect. All of that is there. And then there is conditioning.
Sneha, to this question and to what General Kulkarni and the other panelists have been speaking about, I really have to say here that when we join Army, okay, so I have a lot of course-mates, and we have been discussing over the years as to, how initial years used to be. So very honestly, I would like to say that the commanding officers at our times, many of them were in a very sheltering mode, they would want to shelter the lady officers because the lady has just come in. So accordingly, he would, give her the opportunity, or for that matter, responsibility. I got a commanding officer who from day one, put me on the convoys. I would take convoys in the Northeast, in the insurgency areas. So I did not face that kind of, I would say a kind of a block in the mindset, I would say. It's all about the mindset. That's what I'm trying to say. I did not find any kind of a block in the mind of my commanding officer, whom I'm really grateful to, because from day one, I was with my troops on the field. I was doing everything that my counterparts were doing. I was taking convoys, and it was my initial months in way into the army. So that led me into, finding my way in the army in a different way altogether. And my performances, my way of, my outlook, my way of doing things were, I think it all started from there. So when a lady officer joins the Indian Army, she joins never with that mindset that she will be treated as separate as a lady. We are wanting to be at par with the gentlemen officers. Yes, not denying the discussion of the infantry and fighting a war, going in the war front. Those are different discussions. We are still not there. The kind of roles that lady officers have taken on at this moment, I do not think there is any kind of doubt in the mind of a lady officer when she's sitting on the chair of a commanding officer, because she has been a platoon commander, she has been given the roles of the company commanders, and many cases I've seen the second in commands, they have taken those roles also. So she is very, very clear about the fact that she has to lead men. She is sitting on the chair to lead men. As far as empathy is concerned, as far as the other discussions that are taking place, how can you speak of empathy empathy lacking in lady officers? In most cases, a lady is considered to be more empathetic. The HR roles are given mostly to women, or women in general. The psychiatrists are mostly women you would see outside in the, out in the civil. So how can you say that the interpersonal relationships are not working? I think these are very short-sighted, discussions, and I'm sure there must have been some loopholes. There must have been some issues which must have been noticed by our generals, and I respect them for the views that they have brought out. Number one, them coming out in public was definitely quite a demeaning thing. But I have a bad news. Not a single lady officer is going to get demotivated with this, because we are here to stay. We are here to do our job well. All right. And that needs to be understood. I'm not saying to the higher ranks in our services, but this needs to be understood in general by everybody, that we are here to do our job. We are
Right.
not sitting here as a lady. We are sitting here as an officer.
Yeah. So, Sneha, can I just
Right. I think
chip
Lieutenant
in?
Colonel Ankita Srivastav has been wanting to say something. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So, bending gender stereotype. This is my book, No Woman's Land. This talks about bending gender stereotypes. This talks about my challenges, my journey, my life as a lady officer, and it was not an easy, but there's no
Right.
complaining. There's simple alignment. So I would love to tell the audience, ki please read. This is about lady officers. No Woman's Land.
All right. Okay, I'm sure there's a lot more to discuss, but I do want to thank our panelists very sincerely. We may have a difference of opinions, but one thing is for sure, gender parity, gender equality, and gender neutrality are not words, terms that can be seen with completely unconnected, independent lens. They're very much interconnected, and that's possibly the only way forward of representing gender the best in the best parity way possible. Major General Dhruv Katoch, Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni, Lieutenant Colonel Ankita Srivastava, as well as Captain Amrit Kaur, thank you very much for your time and your insight.